Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
May 7th, 2018.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down
and
over
06,
and out.
6 minutes after the hour. We're talking about, strangely enough, we're talking about not the president's travails, but his lawyer, which shows you the lawyer is not doing a good job because it's become about him, Giuliani. And we have to say this, Giuliani was great on 9/11. We love that. He gave his city and the country great leadership. It had nothing to do with politics. We all loved him. But that time has gone. He was the man of the day. He was the man of the day. He rose to the occasion. He leapt forward and helped America through that dark day. He understood that it wasn't a day for political posturing or settling political scores. And in the end, it wasn't about him. It was about the thousands of innocent victims that were taken from their families in New York, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon. It was about the dozens of friends he lost that day who made up the bulk of the city's leadership. And it was about the hundreds of police and firemen who gave their lives to remind a long-wandering America that there are values worth fighting and dying for. And in the days and months that followed, that was the legacy that the Gotham Gazelle strove valiantly to preserve. The man made the moment, and the moment made the man. And you also have to remember why Giuliani was never a national politician. I wrote in 2006 in the very same book, he cannot win west of the Hudson for numerous reasons, mainly because of his liberalism and his experience during and after 9/11, which was so transforming that it would be difficult to translate his popularity back into politics without diminishing it. You see, I wrote, not every day is September 11th. Most days are like September 10th. A president gets up, has breakfast, passes bills, signs executive orders, appoints judges, chooses cabinet members, and every day the Gotham Gazelle spends in the White House is another day we would be holding our breath. The last 6 years have been hard enough, I wrote. After 4 years, Giuliani could turn the whole country blue in every sense of the word. And that is because Giuliani is a political liberal. But we're not talking about his liberalism or his conservatism. We're talking about his mistakes as a lawyer in the most high-profile case of our lifetime. And that is the mistakes he is making by grandstanding on behalf of Donald Trump. John on WABC, line 8. Go ahead, please. What do you have to say about these topics on the Savage Nation?
Hi, Dr. Savage. I was working for Kidder Peabody in 1987 when then New York attorney Giuliani, trying to make a name for himself, busted into our office and arrested a perfectly innocent man for the sole reason of trying to pressure him to flip on his boss. Mr. Wigden was the head of arbitrage at Kidder Peabody, and when the U.S. Marshals broke into the office, he thought it was a joke by the traders, where you get the rent-a-cop guys to come in and perform.
Oh.
So he was laughing, and Giuliani's guys come up and slam him against the wall and handcuff him with his hands behind his back. The man realized they were serious now, and they read him his rights and everything in front of everybody. We were all sitting there in stunned silence, and he just burst into tears. His hands being behind his back, he couldn't wipe the tears from his face. They lead him out like that, and months later they just wiped the whole thing away. The case is dropped. The man's career is ruined. He never worked another day on Wall Street, and he had done absolutely nothing wrong.
So you're saying his tactics are that of the mafia itself?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Representative Louis Gohmert wrote a great article on this monumental, The Naked Truth about Robert Mueller. But I'm wondering if these same accusations against Mueller don't apply to Giuliani. They're both ruthless prosecutors. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. Which is what, maybe if we have him working on our side and he's kicking down Hillary's door someday, we would like that kind of.
Thank you for that horrible story. But listen to what Representative Gohmert says about Mueller. He says, judging by Mueller's history, it doesn't matter who he has to threaten, harass, prosecute, or bankrupt to get to allege something, or for that matter, anything. It certainly appears Mueller will do whatever it takes to bring down his target, ethically or unethically, based on my findings. It sounds very much like what Giuliani is known for in New York. And that's irrelevant right now. What's relevant is the mistakes he is making, in my estimation. Right after he appeared on Wallbanger's show on TV last week, I went on the air and I said he made one mistake after the other. And I was right, because the very next day he backtracked. The very next day the president admonished him. But that wasn't enough. He still didn't shut up. All over the weekend, on every major TV show, there he was again, trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but he certainly didn't do the president a favor. I think he dug the wheels into the mud even further. When Stephanopoulos asked him about Cohen, Giuliani on Cohen, he said he made payments to other women. He said, if it was necessary, yes. You've got to listen to this. It's important you try to hear it from the beginning. Here is George Stephanopoulos asking if Cohen made other payments to other women for the president in clip 3.
You said this was a regular arrangement he had with Michael Cohen. So did Michael Cohen make payments to other women for the president?
I have no knowledge of that, but I would think if it was necessary, yes. He made payments for the president.
If it was necessary, yes. If it's necessary. So I've asked at the beginning of the show, should the president take the fifth? Or should Giuliani stop taking the fifths that he's apparently taking before every interview? I mean, it's comedic in the political arena, but, there's some truth to it. The guy doesn't sound like he's doing the right thing here. Okay, 855-400-728. The country's doing better than ever. Unemployment rates are low. Stock market's great. Even liberals have never had it so good. They're all buying new cars. The liberals are buying new cars. They have all new money flowing like they've never seen before. They're all able to buy sailboats and take trips to Guatemala to work with the Compaseros, bringing in drugs. What do you think should be done? Is Giuliani doing the right thing or the wrong thing? And if you have any other comments, let's make them now on the show. Mike on ABC, line 7. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Dr. Savage, thanks for taking my call. By the way, I'm a huge listener. I've been listening for over 20 years. But I got to take issue with the fact that look, it's like Reagan's 13th Amendment on conservatives here. I feel like we're taking Churchill and throwing him out like they did in England after World War II. Giuliani turned around the city. He saved us.
Well, we understand. I said that. I just read for 10 minutes about how good he did on 9/11.
I know, but you also could have...
How long ago was 9/11? What year was that?
Right, it doesn't matter.
It was 17 years ago.
In New York,
people change in 17 years. And that's not the issue. The issue is he doing the right thing for Trump or not?
The right thing to do for Trump is to bash the people that are his real enemies, not Rudy Giuliani.
Well, wait a minute. Now you're turning it around on me. You're making me the issue, not Giuliani the issue. Giuliani is making one mistake after another as a lawyer, is what I'm saying.
Mistakes, we know that. Michael, you had somebody just on who said you compared him to using mob tactics. When I worked in the waste removal industry in New York City, and it was Rudy Giuliani himself who rid that entire industry in New York City of the mob. So I take offense to that.
What do you mean? You mean garbage is picked up better now?
Yes, it is actually. People don't get
it's better garbage men now because of Giuliani. I'm glad to hear it.
People don't get killed for it. Yes, so that's better.
But we understand Giuliani did a good job. That's not the point. The issue is he doing a good job now for Donald Trump? And I think the evidence is no.
The evidence is clear. Obviously, he made a mistake. He said something stupid. He shouldn't have opened his mouth when he.
But wait, hold on. You say he said something stupid. You mean last Wednesday on Wallbanger's TV show?
Yes. What he said.
All right, fine. And everyone saw that. But instead of learning from that mistake, what did Mr. Giuliani do? He doubled down and went on TV over and over and over again, making more mistakes.
My point is that we're focusing on the wrong thing. You had Saturday Night Live devoting an entire episode to making fun of every single person in his administration.
Yeah, but I don't watch Saturday Night Live. I have never watched it in my entire life. I pay no attention to it. I don't care who's on it. It means nothing to me. Whereas Giuliani was on mainstream television shows, I think, making mistakes as a lawyer.
I agree with you 100%, but those shows garner like 2 million views.
Correct. And who watches Saturday Night Live? 99%, they're stoner liberals. So they're already against Trump. So what's to be gained by caring about what they do?
Well, the point is that, the idea that you're devoting an entire show to tearing down a guy who's trying...
No, I'm not devoting a show to tearing down. I'm devoting an entire show to try to signal to the president that he needs to get a new lawyer. He needs to get rid of Giuliani as his lawyer because the lawyer is not doing a job for him. The lawyer is undermining him.
Totally agree, and I think that if he had taken...
So we agree, but you're mad at me anyway.
I'm mad at the idea that we're stabbing each other in the back here instead of focusing on the real enemy.
How many times do I have to tell you that I am an independent conservative? I am not a part of a bowling team.
I know you're not, Michael.
And so why do you think the president had me in the White House for 30 minutes? Do you think he's not aware of the fact? Do you think he's not aware of the fact that I criticized his launching Tomahawk missiles in Syria? You think he doesn't know that?
He does. Of course he does. Of course he knows.
All right, so why would the president himself say, wait a minute, this guy calls them like he sees them. This guy is an independent. I respect people who speak their mind, especially when I think they're making sense, even though they disagree with me. So if he hears me and he gets the message, I don't mean he's sitting and listening to me now. He's got other things to do. But he gets messaging at the end of the day what talk shows have said about him. And I'm trying to send a signal to the White House that he needs to get a new lawyer. That's the whole purpose of today's show.
Right, I get what you're doing here. It seems like a lot of bad.
I know it's painful to you because you think that all conservatives are on the same team.
No, that's not.
Well, why don't you ask your friends at Fox News why I'm not on their team? Ask yourself why I'm the only talk show host in America of my magnitude of my extreme magnitude and of my fame who is not allowed on that network. See if there's a team there.
Now I get it, right.
So there is no team. Every talk show host in this country is against everyone else, except those on the same cartel represented by the same agent. But I don't want to waste any more time about talk shows. We have a presidency that's floundering right now. Our agenda is being stopped by Mueller and the Democrats, and more drugs are coming over the border than ever. More illegals are coming over the border than ever. We are at great risk of losing this nation, and it's got to stop. Mueller has to be stopped, and it's not through Giuliani that he's going to be stopped. I would like to ask another question, and by the way, I respectfully disagree with you on not criticizing people who are allegedly on our side. I think it's very important that we self-criticize in order to get the best job done. I don't know which lawyers are left. Who is left? It seems to me that the top lawyers in the country are gone. Dershowitz would be great. Dershowitz would be great, but I don't think he's available for this job, and I don't think he wants the job. I don't even know if he wants the job, to be honest, but I think he'd be far better than Giuliani is. Dershowitz is smarter, and he's also much more circumspect in his commentary. In fact, he criticized Wallbanger right on his own show, and I think Wallbanger was crestfallen because he thought he owned Dershowitz. He thought he owned him because he had him on the show. He thought he was like one of his puppets. Dershowitz criticized him and said, you were wrong 3 times in one show, and Wallbanger didn't know what to do. So I think that Dershowitz would be a good choice. I can't think of anyone else. All the other top guys seem to not want the job, and there's a reason they don't want the job. They're all members of major league, gigantic law firms. These firms have their tentacles in every case that you could imagine on a grand scale. They're all looking for the biggest cases they could get. If they were to be too closely tied to Donald Trump and they should be victorious, the entire liberal side of their firm would lose customers like you can't believe. It's business, and more business. It's all about money. Oh, I'm running so late all over again. This is the Savage Nation. We're talking about should Giuliani stop taking the fifths before every appearance on television. Back in a minute.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 7th, 2018.
We're talking about the naked truth about Robert Mueller, tied in with Giuliani's missteps. And the most important article ever written about this subject is The Naked Truth About Robert Mueller by Representative Louis Gohmert. I have never seen anything as extensively written on an individual that indicts him so clearly as I have in this article. It appeared on May 2nd in the Doug Ross Journal. I linked it on michaelsavage.com on Thursday. I'm leaving it up on the website for 2 days because he says Mueller has a long and sordid history of illicitly targeting innocent people. His many actions are a stain upon the legacy of American jurisprudence. He lacks the judgment and credibility to lead the prosecution of anyone. Now, he goes down in the article to help better inform you about the special prosecutor leading the effort to railroad President Donald Trump through manufactured charges. Judging by Mueller's history, he writes, it doesn't matter who he has to threaten, harass, prosecute, or bankrupt to get to allege something, or for that matter, anything. He writes, it certainly appears Mueller will do whatever it takes to bring down his target, ethically or unethically, based on my findings. And he then lays out the evidence. And he goes into Robert Mueller's background. He cites the Whitey Bulger affair. And I suggest you read the Representative Kurt Weldon affair, who was attacked and crushed by Robert Mueller with false charges and false allegations. He then talks about 9/11 and how the FBI screwed up and could have been stopped. The 9/11 attacks could have been stopped, according to Kurt Weldon, but the FBI blew it. And the fact was there was a secret program called Able Danger that actually identified the Brooklyn cell of Al-Qaeda in January and February of 2000, over 1 year before 9/11. And they identified Mohammed Atta as one of the members of that Brooklyn cell, along with 3 other terrorists. And Kurt Weldon goes on to say that the Able Danger team attempted on 3 separate occasions to provide information to the FBI about the Brooklyn cell of Al-Qaeda. And on all 3 separate occasions, they were denied by lawyers in the previous administration to transfer that information. It's one of the most important articles you will ever read about the FBI under Robert Mueller and who this man actually is, and how dangerous he is to the survival of America, and why Donald Trump has to act almost immediately to save not only his presidency, but the nation from Robert Mueller and those behind him. He is not working alone. Be here or be nowhere.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Yes, I say, come on over, baby. Baby, you can't go wrong. We ain't
8 years. 8 years we had a gangster running America. 8 years we had a left-wing mafia running the United States of America under Eric Holder as the consigliere to the mafioso Barack Obama. There, every action was meant to undermine America, destabilize America, weaken the military, weaken the borders, destroy the language, step on the culture. Not one investigation by the rats in the media. For over 1 year now, we have watched this charade, this unjust charade against Donald Trump, led by Robert Mueller, who destroyed the FBI's credibility while he ran it, according to someone who knows what went on, Congressman, and he may be with us tomorrow or the next day. I'm going to ask all of you to spend some time tonight reading Monumental, The Naked Truth About Robert Mueller. This could blow the lid off this entire scandal, the sordid scandal of Robert Mueller and what he's doing to us, the American people. And remember, what he's doing to Trump is setting a precedent of what can be done to the next president, should that president be a Democrat. That Democrat president could be subjected to the same tactics by a hand-picked, let us say, special prosecutor on an invented charge. It will be a stain upon the presidency. It will be a stain upon American jurisprudence. It will be a stain upon the American people. The country cannot afford it. With porous borders, millions of illegal aliens are still pouring into this country. Now, I have become a fan of the show called Narcos. I was binge watching it from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and Saturday. I couldn't stop watching it. I went through all 3 seasons. Even they, the writers of it, of this great series on Netflix, talking about the drug cartels from Colombia, then from Mexico, even they wrote into the script, in one scene, one telling scene in season 3, one character says to the other, how many years has NAFTA been in effect? He says, 2 years. And he said, well, what do we bring in, 500 tons now a month? He said, NAFTA's been the greatest gift we've ever had. We can bring it in by the truckload. They said the gringos can only look into about 10% of the trucks that go through the border. Now, when you see a thing like that written into a script of a show called Narcos that the whole world is watching, all around the world, one of the most popular series on television, and you realize that the writers themselves see right through the whole game, and you ask yourself, how can anyone not see what they're now doing to us with the liberal media working hand in glove with them about sympathy for the illegal alien? We're told that all of them come here to work. Well, we know that's a lie, since the welfare rate and the abuse of welfare by the illegal aliens is much higher than that of the indigenous or native population. We're then told that Trump was a liar when he said that there were criminals coming in with them. They then broadened that to say, see, Trump said that in Mexico there are many criminals that are coming in under the guise of immigration. He was right. He never said that all Mexicans are criminals, but the people who work hand in glove with the criminals smeared Trump and said he said all Mexicans are criminals. Well, now we have the same thing going on here, where they're taking a meeting with a Russian about God knows what and turning that into collusion to sway an election. Another big lie. We all know that Goebbels, who was Adolf Hitler's propaganda chief, wrote, if you tell a big lie often enough, it becomes the truth. Mueller and the media are using the tactics of Joseph Goebbels. Let me repeat it again because it's a very important and significant point at the halfway point of today's show Monday. Mueller and the media are using one of the chief tactics of Joseph Goebbels, who was Hitler's propaganda minister. Goebbels said that if you tell a big lie often enough, it becomes the truth. So what is the big lie? The big lie at first was that Donald Trump worked with Russia to sway the election. We found out that was a lie. They couldn't find any evidence. That loudmouth fraud, Maxine Waters, kept screaming, impeach, 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 until she shut her big trap and stopped screaming impeach. Because the smarter Democrats knew there could never be impeachment based upon such a lie as collusion, because there was none. So then they switched it from collusion to something else. And then she just got up and said, I think a week ago, she was no longer screaming collusion. She was just saying, just get out of the White House. Now, I have said 1,000 times, the problem with Republicans is they're too nice. With Democrats, people get destroyed. Any of their opponents are destroyed, or they die. They either get destroyed or they're found dead. With Republicans, there's almost no attack. None. They seem to take it because they are decent. They're generally much better people. That's been my experience. Democrats come from a different world altogether, where there are no rules and no laws. The Republicans are basically nice people and good people. Why has there been no attack upon these opponents of the president rather than just taking it? Why has no one dug into Mueller's past? Well, it's just happened on May 2nd. They did. Representative Louis Gohmert has stood up to the bat, and he's finally put the facts together about the naked truth about Mueller, and I ask you to please read it for your own edification. But you take someone like Maxine Waters. Let me repeat it again until finally somebody hears me. Perhaps the most vocal critic of Trump was for a long time Maxine Waters. She just wouldn't shut up. But like Obama, for the reasons that you can pretty much figure out, she was a sacred cow. Nobody would take her on. They were all afraid of being called a racist. And so she got away with it over and over and over again. But for months now, I've been pointing out that she has a skeleton in her own closet that could come back to haunt her. And that skeleton is quite clear. She was sitting on a major league banking committee as a congresswoman, while her husband was the I think the president of a minority-owned bank. Loans were made by the government through and to this bank that the last I checked had never been repaid, on the order of $11 million. Why don't the Republicans demand an investigation of Maxine Waters and her husband in that banking scandal? Why? Because the best defense is a good offense, and the criminals on the Democrat side know this. They learned it in the streets that they grew up in. And so they constantly keep the Republicans and Donald Trump off base with false and malicious attacks in order to make sure that they are never looked into, and that the work of America is not done, and that the will of the people is not done. Make no mistake about it. Even though the election was close, even though it was a hair that by which Trump won, even though Hillary won larger numbers in the popular vote, that does not matter. This is a winner-takes-all system, as we learned under Obama. Nobody voted in that large majority for Obama, and he lied to get where he was. Obama lied day and night. I was very impressed with Obama while he was running. I said, this guy sounds good. He seems like a fair-minded guy. He's going to be open-minded. He's going to clean things up. The exact opposite came down to be. So the fact of the matter is, there were no investigations done at that time. None whatsoever of all the scandals. Now let's talk about Obama's biggest scandal. $150 billion or so was transferred to Iran to permit Iran to build a nuclear weapon under the guise of pursuing a peaceful nuclear program. Where did the $150 billion come from? Why did we see no investigations by George Stephanopoulos, Wolf Blitzer, and the other clowns in the media, the other fake journalists? Why was there never any mention of the scandalous $150 billion? Instead, we hear about $130,000 paid to a filthy dirtbag, a stripper, a prostitute, in my estimation. The lowest form of humanity is what this creature is. And yet we hear about it day and night. $130,000 versus $150 billion. One you hear about, one you hear nothing about. Where did the $150 billion come from? Where did Obama magically get that money? Who did it go to? Now, I'm going to give you a piece of information that may or may not be public, that I learned about on my last trip to Washington. Actually, my first and last trip to Washington. Maybe my last trip, but did you know that this $150 billion that was transferred to Iran was transferred in cash? And did you know that it was transferred in various currencies, not just U.S. dollars? It was transferred in dollars. It was transferred in euros. It was transferred in pounds. Did you know any of this? Is it public knowledge, Robert? Well, if it isn't public knowledge, it's now public knowledge, and I will not divulge my sources. $150 billion or so went to Iran in cargo planes to buy off the mullahs in U.S. dollars, in euros, in pounds, and other paper currencies. Where'd the money come from, and why were they all so anxious to bribe the mullahs? Well, where was Mueller then? We don't know. Wasn't he in the FBI at that time? Why did he not look into that? My friends, these are very dangerous times. Dangerous not only for the agenda of those of us who voted for the president, but dangerous for the democracy itself that is hanging like a loose tooth. Dangerous certainly for the presidency, which will never be the same after this Mueller character gets through with it. So the big issue is Giuliani helping or hurting the president? And should the president take the fifth if he is forced to testify? And should Giuliani stop taking the fifths that he appears to be taking before every television interview? I'm Michael Savage. I'll be back in a moment.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
It is the Savage Nation. Back to the news in a quick second, but I have to tell you some big news about SimpliSafe. Yeah, they're a great company. They won Editor's Choice Awards from CNET Magazine, PC Magazine, and The Wirecutter. They're three respected product testers, and they put this great company, SimpliSafe, through a battery of tests, compared it to other home security products, and bingo, SimpliSafe won every time. I've been telling you about them for years, and they now protect over 2 million Americans. This is a home security system that you will want in your home. The sensors to them are so small, you're not going to notice them. Easy to use. You can control it from your own house, from your phone, rather. But here's the most important reason. Simply Safe provides you not a gadget. It's comprehensive protection for all your windows, your doors, your home, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You get professional alarm monitoring around the clock, just $15 a month. No contracts. No one else is doing it like this. It's why they're winning. Learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect your home. It's simple. Go to simplysafesavage.com. Write it down. That's simplysafesavage.com and protect yourself at all times. Now, in the next hour, we're going to talk about the other topics, but I just put up an article. I did a Google during the break on the payment to Iran, and underneath the naked truth about Robert Mueller, underneath that is a picture of me at the president's desk, but under that is an article I found from 2006, and it says $1.7 billion payment to Iran was an all in cash. Many of us at the time, many of us today, believe that this was not a payment, but a payoff. And that the money that Obama gave to Iran came from a fund administered by the Treasury Department for settling litigation claims. It was a so-called judgment fund, which is taxpayer money Congress permanently approved in the event it's needed, which allowed the president, then Obama, to bypass direct congressional approval to make a settlement. And so you should understand that Obama broke the law by skirting the law. Obama broke the law over and over again. This is the biggest break of law I've ever seen. There was not one peep out of Jake Tapper, Woody Blitzer, or any of the other little mini-me's, the little mini-mice, the mini-mice of the media who are now oh so brazen with Donald Trump. I want you to think back to Obama again. In all of his press conferences, did anyone ever yell out, Mr. President, what about the payments to Iran? Did anyone ever scream out at Obama? No one. They didn't dare. Why? They were afraid of him. And so now we have brazen reporters who are suddenly screaming at the president about irrelevancies because they are puppets in the theater of the absurd. The theater of the absurd that is being orchestrated by the Democrat Party that lost the election and will not concede it. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Stop the Coming Civil War. You are witnessing a public relations civil war that, if it's not stopped by firing Mueller tomorrow, could result in a shooting civil war in this country. Because whether you people know it or not, there are over 50 million of us who voted for the president. And many of us have had enough of this trying to steal our vote. We will not permit this country to descend into chaos, nor will we permit our votes to be nullified by a rogue prosecutor who is known for not only skirting the law but breaking the law to win cases. Enough is enough. It's time for the president to fire Mueller. And if Mueller should subpoena the president should never, ever speak to him. And yet Giuliani said he should. Giuliani is not doing him a service. That is why I've been focusing on Giuliani today. And not so comedically, I've been saying, should the president take the fifth? And should Giuliani stop taking the fifths that he apparently is taking before every interview? Giuliani is not helping the president. The president should not only not take the fifth, he shouldn't appear. It's that simple. Congress can call it a contempt of Congress if they will, but it will not be a contempt of Congress. It would be considered a contempt of the prosecutor, who is contemptible to begin with. WKZO in Michigan. Ron, line 8, what's your opinion? Go ahead, please.
Well, yeah, first off, let me, say that I am a supporter of the president. I voted for him. I like what he's doing in the economy. But maybe Rudy is really trying to do, a good job for him. We all knew what we got, with President Trump. He's a billionaire. He loves women. Perhaps, Rudy knows what came out of Cohen's office. And there perhaps, and I hate to even say this, but if I don't, somebody else is going to think of it, but perhaps there's many more women in this storm. And if Rudy's talking, and a good attorney should not be talking like this, but he might...
Well, wait. Let's say there are other women who were paid off by Cohen. Is that something that an attorney should imply during a TV interview before it even comes up?
Oh, I agree. He shouldn't.
He shouldn't. So my whole point is Giuliani's not on his game anymore. He's lost it. He doesn't know what he's doing. and he's not helping the president. That's all I'm saying. It's time for Giuliani to go back to what he's been doing. God bless him. He was a great American at the time. He's not doing the president a favor now.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Gene lives on his back. Gene loves chimney stacks. His outrageous screams and he ball. Gene, let yourself go.
Savage Nation. Well, there are big things brewing. Oil is jumping $70 a barrel. That's going to be a big one. The embassy in Jerusalem, oh boy, is that going to be a big thing. That's happening this month. The president and his team are going to Israel and changing decades of U.S. diplomacy and international consensus by the anti-Israel crowd. As you know, President Trump announced on December 6th the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and the transfer of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And so the embassy will get a festive inauguration on Monday next week to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel. This is a big deal. His decision was a godsend to the Israelis and a horror to the Palestinians who want to make the eastern part of the city the capital of their future state. And so they hate Trump. Now, this issue of Jerusalem is one of the biggest issues between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But it's a reality. They're naming a street for Donald Trump in Israel. It's a big deal. While the Palestinians are planning not only a boycott, but also probably riots. This is the Savage Nation. These are some of the topics we are talking about. And so far, we don't know what's going to happen next week. What if I tell you that I probably could have wrangled an invitation to the Jerusalem situation, but I didn't want to? And I'd leave it at that. Let's just leave it at that, because it's not important. It's not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about what's going on in the world. And if you want to talk about the topics we've been talking about, phone number is 855-400-7282. We'll move on from Giuliani, Comey, Trump, and the women. I believe we should listen to Alan Dershowitz, who's far smarter than Giuliani as a lawyer, much more circumspect in what he says. Listen to clip 8, Alan Dershowitz on the Trump legal team.
I think this was a very bad week for the Trump team, but it was also a very bad week for the Mueller team in light of the judge who rebuked the Mueller team for the Manafort thing. It was a very good week for Americans because we now find a judge who's overseeing this and who said Americans don't want to see anybody with unlimited power. But the Trump team has to speak with a single narrative. They have to get their story clearly set out. It has to be put in writing. It shouldn't be put on television shows off the cuff.
Bingo. That's all I've been saying. It shouldn't be put on television shows off the cuff. Giuliani's just winging it, and he's singing it, and it's not a song that the American people need to hear right now. WABC New York. Mr. Israel, line 5. Go ahead, please. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Dr. Savage. Always a pleasure to speak to you. And, yes, I was commenting in regards to what you said about the Iran deal. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but the fact that, you know, we just found out, you know, over the weekend, and John Kerry has been doing these side missions, you know, to try to save himself and save his image. Now we know already, like you had said, about the $150 billion. If you remember back in 2015 when they were signing and negotiating the deal, they had these side dealings that they were talking about, but they tried to hush it up. And now we know this is probably why he's making all these private meetings, because we know that.
Why is Kerry running secret meetings with Iran?
That's what I'm saying, because now the truth is going to come out. It's going to be exposed that probably the money that they gave them, who knows, it probably went into somebody's private account. That's first of all. And probably some of the elected officials may have gotten paid under the table to get some stuff moving.
Well, when there's $170 billion, don't you think some of it got washed back to those who were negotiating the deal?
100%. No doubt about that. And that,
and I think that's what we're going to see come flying up in the face of all those who pushed the Iran deal, like they were doing it for the good of the world.
Exactly. And that's why we see now Kerry is trying to cover himself, because there are probably private, sealed documents there that he's afraid that are going to be exposed. And we know Donald Trump, he's a man of his word, and if he's going to get this out there.
All right, let's see what happens. Tomorrow is a big day, because tomorrow, this is news that just came out today, Trump to announce Iran nuke deal decision Tuesday. President Donald Trump said he would announce a decision on the future of the Iran nuclear deal on Tuesday, as European countries piled pressure on Washington to remain in the 2015 agreement. Did you know that? That the Euros, who hate America and want open borders and love to give up the sovereignty of their own nation, these cowardly Euros, these quislings of their own nation, are wanting we to follow them. And I don't know that Trump's going to do that. Trump has threatened to withdraw from the deal, which gave Iran relief from economic sanctions in exchange for limiting its uranium enriching capacity. And Trump said today in a Twitter post today, Monday, I will be announcing my decision on the Iran deal tomorrow from the White House at 2 p.m. That's pretty clear. That's 2 p.m. tomorrow. It's 11 a.m. here on the Pacific, so it's before I go on the air. Trump has until May 12th, you may know, to decide whether to reintroduce U.S. sanctions on Iran, which would deal a heavy blow to the agreement. Now, under this agreement, if you're interested in it, with the United States, France, Germany, Britain, Russia, and China, Iran strictly limited uranium enrichment capacity to try to show that it was not trying to develop atomic bombs. But Israel came out last week and said that they were violating it anyway. Yesterday, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani hinted, actually today, that Iran could remain in the nuclear accord even if the U.S. dropped out. But said that Tehran would fiercely resist U.S. pressure to limit its influence in the Middle East. Now, Britain, France, and Germany want the accord with Iran to go on. By the way, I was in Washington when the head of France was there. This was not a pretty scene to be shown to the public. But he was arguing with the president, I know it for a fact, to keep the talks, actually to keep the commitment with Iran the way it is. So we don't know what's going to happen, but tomorrow is a huge, huge day. Communist Foreign Secretary of Britain, Boris Johnson, is in Washington for talks this week, wants the deal with Iran to stay. Boris Johnson is a long-term left-wing fanatic. And Boris Johnson said in an interview with the New York Times, at this moment, Britain is working alongside the Trump administration and our French and German allies to ensure that this commitment maintains itself. So in other words, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's heavy-duty lobbying going on, but an awful lot is at stake before the president and his team goes to Israel for the transfer. What's going to happen tomorrow when Trump gets out of the Iran nuke deal? Tell me what will happen. I think he should absolutely end the agreement, which guarantees Iran nuclear terror and continues Iran on the path to a nuclear weapon in 7 years. Now, if Trump fixes the Iran nuke deal mess, you know what's going to happen? You're going to hear the media call it a Trump-Iran collusion. When Trump fixes the North Korean nuke deal mess, they'll call it the Trump-North Korea collusion. Everything Trump does, they will try to undo. You know, here's something you should know about Iran, a little bit that you should know about Iran. Iran has a very large population of people who hate the mullahs. I spoke to a gentleman who is from Iran last week, who was raised as a Muslim. He's about the kind of Muslim that most Catholics are in America today. You might call him a lapsed Muslim. He doesn't really care about the religion. It's just part of his heritage. It's more a heritage thing than it is a religious thing, as is true with most people in America today with their religion. 90% of the Iranian people hate the mullahs. It's a terrorist state run by religious fanatics. 90% of the people hate the mullahs and they want them gone. Women are oppressed, minorities are oppressed, gays are killed. Only 10% of the Iranian people support the religious fanatics who have their finger on the people's necks. And so if Trump ends the nuclear deal, what's going to happen then? We'll see tomorrow on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Tomorrow is going to be all about Iran, and you should know something about Iran. Their economy is in shambles. Obama bailed them out. The people were near revolution. People are not getting paid in the government. They don't trust the government, nor should they. And the billions that were released by Obama and Holder were illegal. They skirted the law. And Obama's parting gift propped up this theocracy. The fact of the matter is, I personally think that Trump is going to make some amazing statements tomorrow, because in this year, we have seen a miracle. Trump's move to Jerusalem is biblical. It coincides with the book of Zechariah 1-12 and Matthew 1-12, both of the chronology of the Jewish freedom from 70 years of slavery to Babylon. And I believe that God's hand is involved with Trump as well, as I said to you way back in the beginning. As flawed as he is, as imperfect as he is, as a man who is not, let he who is without sin throw the first stone. Trump could go down in history as one of the great peacemakers in the history of the world. Remember that before the dirtbag stripper and her pit bull lawyer came along and everything went off the rails again, Trump had achieved something that no president had achieved in all the years that we have known the Koreas to be at war. 70 years of war, basically, a Cold War. And he seems to have nullified the fat man, the little fat guy in North Korea. So he's done some great things. And I believe that God's hand is involved in the election of Donald Trump, as flawed as he is, as imperfect as he is. Which president has been a perfect man? Can you name one? Which president has not had scandals surrounding them on their way up? Only one. And that's Obama. Is that because he had no scandals? Or because his team was so powerful, so ruthless, and so terrifying that no scandals were allowed to leak out? There were many scandals around Obama before his election. I can name a few. I don't think we want to dig up old history. One of them you should never forget. There are many scandals around Hillary Clinton. I don't think we have to talk about them. And they're far greater than whether or not a man slept with a stripper and paid her off to shut her mouth. By the irony here is that he paid her off to shut her mouth and she's talking anyway. You talk about violating an agreement. I mean, let's say he paid her off because he did have a thing with her, which is disgusting unto itself. Don't think I'm justifying it. How anybody would want to sleep around behind Melania's back is like beyond me. Class act like Melania. Who would want to go with this dirtbag, this filthy thing? All right, that's another story, to each his own. But that's not the issue. The issue is that she signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. She got paid, and she's talking anyway. How is that possible? Why is that not an issue? Why would you ever sign an NDA again with anybody if she's allowed to do a thing like this? But getting back to the bigger issue, peace with North Korea looks like it's here. Maybe there'll be peace with the Arabs before long. It could just be that this muscular move of the embassy to Jerusalem is just the medicine that the doctor called for to stop the maniacs from threatening everything in the Middle East. Whatever they're given, they destroy. I remember when Gaza was given to the Palestinians, and it was done because of American liberals. Gaza had been given to the Israelis after a war. They took it, and they turned Gaza into a virtual paradise. They turned the desert into a flowering garden. They had greenhouses. They were exporting flowers to Europe. I don't know if you know this. Well, the American liberal community, the European liberal community, encouraged Israel to give up Gaza for peace. The very next day, rockets were flying from Gaza into Israel. And what did the Palestinians do with Gaza when they inherited it? They destroyed the greenhouses. They stole the hoses out of the greenhouses and turned back into a wasteland. It's beautiful beachfront property that is being decimated by the inheritors of this biblical land. And so there's a lot at stake in this situation. And I could ask you if you think it's right to move the embassy to Jerusalem, and maybe that's a good question for tomorrow. Let's take a caller on that. John on WDRC in Connecticut. Was it a good move to move the embassy to Jerusalem? Did we need this provocation right now, John?
It was absolutely the only move, and it is biblical. You're right. But let me ask you this. What nation in the world doesn't get to decide where their own capital is? We wouldn't allow the Arab countries to decide that Washington is no longer the capital of the United States. They're going to make Hartford, Connecticut the capital. So, of course, Israel should decide where their capital is and where our should be.
I could argue with that and say that the Palestinians will argue that it's not the Jews' land to decide, that it's their land that was stolen from them. I've heard all the arguments, and you have too.
You know what, Dr. Savage? There is only one country in the Middle East where Muslims could live in freedom. And that's
you don't have to tell me. I've been there. I know that they can live in freedom and have a decent life.
Absolutely.
In fact, most Arabs, whether they be Muslim or Christian, love Israel. They love living in Israel. They don't want to live in the surrounding nations.
Without 100%. And as far as the Iranian deal, get our money back. Why would we get cash?
How are we ever going to get $170 billion back?
Of course we can't. I'm being facetious because who would have ever given cash in a deal like that? All at once, in the middle of the night.
And it was done by Obama in a quasi-legal or illegal manner as a going-away present to his friends, the Muslims of Iran. But tomorrow, U.S. President Donald Trump will make a decision on the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement. He's called it the worst deal ever. And oil prices are climbing in anticipation of that decision because investors are expecting the worst to happen. Worst case scenario on Iran nuclear deal. The market is nervous. The world will watch Iran's response if and when the nuke deal ends tomorrow. Watch the energy markets. We'll see what the hedge funds are doing.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
We're all sitting here wondering, how can the president maintain Giuliani as his spokesman, in essence, when this Fugazi is making one mistake after another? If I had a lawyer and so much was at stake, and my lawyer was grandstanding me, and every other day was on a TV show, I would dump that lawyer, because he wouldn't be a good lawyer. He'd be a fool. Every lawyer knows that you dummy up, you shut your mouth, because everything you say can and will be used against you. It's the first rule of law, and I'm not a lawyer. I mean, don't you know that? You learn that in elementary school, for God's sakes. Everything that you say publicly can and will be used against you, especially with such a high-stakes game. So I'm saying, should the president take the fifth? Because his lawyers are obviously taking many fifths. Before every speech, it looks like he's taking a fifth, getting up there slurring and shooting his mouth off. Okay, what is he gaining by this? Does anyone listening to the show tell me what Giuliani is gaining by all these appearances? He went on the Wallbanger show last week and set off a shockwave by trying to throw Jared Kushner under the bus by saying men are disposable. That was number one. Then he made statements that was so indicting that no one could believe he was not fired the next day. Then Trump takes him to the woodshed on Friday and says he's still learning the case. But that's not enough for him. He goes on shows all weekend long, and it's about him again. Here's another story. Putin sworn in for another 6 years as president. I wonder if they're going to investigate if there was any collusion with Trump to get him sworn in for another 6 years in Russia. We'll have to see how long that would last. If there could be a collusion investigation in Russia. I kind of doubt that one. You know, in all seriousness, what we're fighting for is the survival of America. I read an article from USA Today yesterday. Trump's judges are flexing their muscles from civil rights to campaign spending because President Trump has put in some really great conservative federal judges across the nation. And they're having a great impact on issues ranging from civil rights, campaign spending, public prayer, and the death penalty. And I can read them to you. They're really good names. Judge Amul Thapar of the Sixth Circuit. Judge James Ho, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. 3 judges named by Trump to the Eighth Circuit, Ralph Erickson, Stephen Graz, and David Strass, are doing good things. They're always ruling in favor of police, in favor of prison guards, in favor of a male student seeking the right to face his accuser in a sexual assault case. How's that for basic American jurisprudence? As well as against a naturalized citizen fighting his loss of citizenship. And all of their results please me as a conservative. But the liberals are very upset because Trump's judges are righting a ship that was listing to the left. So we have a wonderful situation now that is being fought tooth and claw by the left in the most devious manner. They're not fighting us on our ideas. They're fighting us in a dirty, underhanded battle. They're kicking us in the you-know-whats. And it's time to end it. As I said, if there was any sign of Russia collusion, we would have known it by now, and I would be the first to say I want the rule of law followed. But when I see a rogue prosecutor not following the rule of law, but following every dirty trick in the book, it's time, it's enough already to end this thing. But I want to go to the Giuliani issue because I think Trump needs to hear loud and clear from the Savage Nation what you think. I think Giuliani is absolutely not only not doing him a favor, he's undermining him. It's apparent to me that not only is the man somewhat malicious, but he seems to be slurring. He seems to be making mistakes. I don't know of any lawyer who would get up on one television show after another and enjoy it so much. As a woman I know whose judgment I respect very much, who voted for Trump, said to me, he seems like a kid at a prom who's getting attention that he never had in a very long time, and he can't stop wanting the spotlight to be on him without regard to the client. This is not good for America. It's not good for our survival as a nation, and it's certainly not good for the president. I don't care whether you like Trump or not. He's the president. You know, it goes back to something that I'm going to make a little personal. I had the honor of being in the White House. It's only 2 weeks ago. It was the greatest honor of my life today. Well, I'm saying outside of the family stuff. To sit at that desk from the ship that I talked about, the wooden desk rescued from an ancient warship, a British warship, to spend 30 minutes with the president talking about a lot of subjects, and then to be ushered into the vice president's office and spend 30 minutes with a man who knows history and talk about the portraits on the walls and things like that, and have the vice president ask me to read the first line of my book, God, Faith, and Reason, and then say to me, underline those lines, would you please, Dr. Savage, and put your initials next to them. I know what the vice president was going to do with the book. And what I'm saying to you is, these are very serious men. They're not there by accident. And Pence is a very God-fearing man. He is hated by a certain segment of the population who is smearing him, making things up about him, saying that he'll put gays in concentration camps, things like that. Well, the very same hysteria and the very same lies are coming out of the media about Donald Trump. How can they make a man like Donald Trump into someone worse than Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin put together? But many liberals are so incensed and so insane because their agenda got thwarted that they're literally insane with regard to Donald Trump. And we're at, I think, a very critical point. If he can survive Mueller, and if this nation can survive Mueller, and the president can get his agenda back on track, because, by the way, it's not even off track. I mean, really steamroll it is what I'm talking about. Put it on a faster track is what I'm trying to get at. Right now, it's a local. I need to get it onto an express track. We could save this nation. We could be proud of our country all over again. We could have secure borders. English will be spoken in the workplace. You will only be able to vote in the English language, no ballots in 6 or 7 languages. That's it. If you can't read our language, then you have no right to vote in this country. That's common sense. And then culture. What do I mean by culture? What is this culture that these people are so afraid of, these left-wing people? What's the culture they're afraid of? Are they afraid of our Bill of Rights? Are they afraid of the U.S. Constitution? Are they afraid of the history of the nation? Everything they say is negative about this country, yet they stay here and they come here. If this country's so bad, why is the whole world trying to get in here? Why does everyone on earth want to come to this nation? It's because it's a great nation. And we need to protect the presidency, not the president. Let me be very clear on that. What is being done to Donald Trump right now with a rogue prosecutor can be done to the next president, should that president be a Democrat. The very same tactics could be used against the next president, which again will cripple the nation for months and perhaps years. I think it's time for Trump to fire Mueller, and I think it's time for Trump to get someone new as his lawyer. I think Giuliani should go back to what he does best, which is knocking down a couple of glasses of wine over lunch with talk show hosts. Giuliani has now made himself the center of everything, which, see, by dint of the fact that we're talking about him means he's made a mistake. We should never be talking about the lawyer. We should be talking about the client, not the lawyer. So Giuliani has always been known as a grandstander. I'm going to dip into a book written in 2006, which I will not quote, but I'll tell you what it says about Giuliani. It's a book of caricatures, and in this book, the author created animals for each of the characters who were written about. Giuliani has a Latin binomial named New Yorkus pseudo-conservatus, and he was given a common name of the Gotham Gazelle. And the author said the Gotham Gazelle moves effortlessly across the plains of Central Park and uses his speed and agility to elude all political predators. Best suited to terrains east of the Hudson, the Gotham Gazelle has been spotted in recent months as far away as New Hampshire or even Iowa. Its unruly mane cut back to fighting trim. An animal known to have an ill temper and a propensity to not run with its own pack, the Gotham Gazelle feeds on headlines and generous self-promotion. The Gotham Gazelle has a political philosophy that was half Rockefeller and half Dirty Harry. And the write-up on Giuliani in this book begins with this. Sometimes a man defines a moment. At other times, a moment will define the man. But few would deny that both were true for Rudy Giuliani on 9/11. Ever since that great and terrible day when extraordinary heroism became an ordinary and in many cases a still unsung virtue, the Gotham Gazelle gracefully and forcefully embodied the spirit of resolve of the American people to stand up to the predatory pack of Islamofascists. Just think for a moment about what this gazelle had to face when he got up that fateful morning. He had a professional reputation as an unyielding hothead, a personal resume that bordered on the scandalous, more political enemies than Kim Jong-il, and a political philosophy that was half Rockefeller, half Dirty Harry. And the book goes on. The mayoral primary that day was to be a sign of the end of his reign over New York City. He had no real political prospects in the future, having squandered his golden opportunity against Hillary in 2000. All the while, the disintegration of his second marriage and the details of his affair with another woman were being chronicled on the gossip pages of New York's dailies, which had forced him out of Gracie Mansion, now the home of his wife and children. Giuliani was forced to sleep in the spare bedroom in a friend's place. Not the natural habitat for a gazelle. His stock was in an Enron-like dive on the morning of 9/11. But by the end of that day, his sins had been forgiven by the people of New York City and all of America, for that matter. And his image as a public figure had been completely recast with the entire world watching. For all his many faults, the one thing he gave his city and the country that day was leadership. And it had absolutely nothing to do with politics. He was a gazelle on a mission who sprinted to the head of the fold. With the rest of our country's politicians scrambling for cover, his was the only image that America saw that day. What we saw was gravity and determination, realism and optimism, and America needed it. Think for a minute about who could have been the face of New York on 9/11. It could have been Hillary standing there with that blank look on her face, framed by that stupid little Yankees hat, competing for camera time with her chubby hubby. It could have been Chuck Schumer, who, when not trying to hide under a rock, would have been fighting Hillary for place in the lens. I don't care if that tower is collapsing. Get that camera over here. Or it could have been Charlie Rangel or Al Sharpton, there to tell us how America was being punished for its racism and support of Israel, all the while demanding contracts for the diversity training needed to mend those rifts. Or even worse, it could have been Hudson Hippo, Jerry Nadler, the Democratic congressman for Lower Manhattan, whose appearance would have only given the terrorists further encouragement to strike again. We're talking about, strangely enough, we're talking about not the president's travails, but his lawyer. which shows you the lawyer is not doing a good job because it's become about him, Giuliani. And we have to say this, Giuliani was great on 9/11. We love that. He gave his city and the country great leadership. It had nothing to do with politics. We all loved him. But that time has gone. He was the man of the day. He was the man of the day. He rose to the occasion. He leapt forward and helped America through that dark day. He understood that it wasn't a day for political posturing or settling political scores. And in the end, it wasn't about him. It was about the thousands of innocent victims that were taken from their families in New York, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon. It was about the dozens of friends he lost that day who made up the bulk of the city's leadership. And it was about the hundreds of police and firemen who gave their lives to remind a long-wandering America that there are values worth fighting and dying for. And in the days and months that followed, that was the legacy that the Gotham Gazelle strove valiantly to preserve. The man made the moment, and the moment made the man. And you also have to remember why Giuliani was never a national politician. I wrote in 2006 in the very same book, he cannot win west of the Hudson for numerous reasons, mainly because of his liberalism and his experience during and after 9/11, which was so transforming that it would be difficult to translate his popularity back into politics without diminishing it. You see, I wrote, not every day is September 11th. Most days are like September 10th. A president gets up, has breakfast, passes bills, signs executive orders, appoints judges, chooses cabinet members, and every day the Gotham Gazelle spends in the White House is another day we would be holding our breath. The last 6 years have been hard enough, I wrote. After 4 years, Giuliani could turn the whole country blue in every sense of the word. And that is because Giuliani is a political liberal. But we're not talking about his liberalism or his conservatism. We're talking about his mistakes as a lawyer in the most high-profile case of our lifetime, and that is the mistakes he is making by grandstanding on behalf of Donald Trump. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Giuliani is way past his prime. I believe he's not helping the president. I think he's actually indicting the president. And I'm not so sure it's by accident, because remember what I'm saying to you, and I've said to you last week, and I rarely get anything wrong, ever. I rarely ever get anything wrong on this show. Ever. Giuliani's loyalties lie with the Southern District of New York. If you watch the show Billions, you know what I'm talking about. The Southern District of New York. That's where his cronies are. What is he doing going on all these TV shows making it about himself? Not one lawyer I know of, not one lawyer I've read about thinks he's doing a good job. The major lawyers in America say the first rule is shut your mouth. You don't even let a client talk before a trial. How many times I've had lawyers say to me, listen to me, don't say anything. Now this guy goes up there and they say to him, do you think he paid off any other women? Stephanopoulos asks him in clip 3, did Cohen make other payments to other women? Listen to what listen to what I just said to you. Should the president take the fifth? Should Giuliani stop taking the fifths that he apparently is taking before every speech? Let's listen to number 3.
You said this was a regular arrangement he had with Michael Cohen. So did Michael Cohen make payments to other women for the president?
I have no knowledge of that, but I would think if it was necessary, yes. He made payments for the president, or he conducted business for the president,
heard anything like
which
that.
means he had legal fees, monies laid out, and expenditures, which I have on my bills to my clients.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just indicted the president, saying he probably made payments to other women for the same thing. Crazy. And he keeps double talking. I've never seen anything like this. He says that Comey is a Judas. Let me say this, Mr. Giuliani. I don't know you. You don't know me. I have nothing against you. I'm sure you're a nice guy. But you know what? A Judas couldn't do more harm to the president than you're doing right now. Get off the damn stage, Rudy. I know you're enjoying the spotlight, but like Andy Warhol said, you know what I mean, 15 minutes of fame? You had many 15 minutes of fame. You don't need another one. So these old guys, they just don't stop. And I am not the only one who sees this. Any major league lawyer knows he's making a mistake. It is a train wreck. So what am I going to ask you? If you think so, I think so. The main thing is I think so. And I don't know why the president holds on to him. Yes, Giuliani is stumbling. Donald Trump Friday said of his new personal lawyer, he'll get his facts straight, meaning he slapped him around. But you know, my position is not he'll get his facts straight. The president and his agenda are in trouble. The business of the nation has been stopped by a rogue prosecutor who himself should be investigated.
Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.